Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, a Fox News alert. American politics was thrown into complete chaos, perhaps permanently, about 3 hours ago, when a grand jury in Manhattan, one of the most liberal cities in America, a place where 80% voted for Joe Biden in the last election, decided to indict Biden's political opponent in the upcoming election, the Republican frontrunner, a man who leads by 30 points in polls, Donald Trump. And the jury did this at the urging of a man called Alvin Bragg. He's the Manhattan district attorney who has been famous so far by making the city much more dangerous by refusing to enforce laws against crimes like robbery and rape. Now, we don't know at this hour what the indictment says. We don't know specifically what the charges are, but previous news reports suggest they will emanate from an alleged payment 7 years ago, a payment that federal regulators said violated no law, but that Alvin Bragg apparently believes is a crime. Either way, the net result is Donald Trump is the first former president of the United States ever to be indicted. So no matter what happens next, we can be certain there is no coming back from this moment. There could be retaliation from red states. The governor of Florida has already said, Ron DeSantis has already issued a statement saying that he will not participate in any extradition of Donald Trump to New York. That's apparently scheduled for next week. As you can probably tell, we're not certain of the full outlines of the story, but we know this moment is a historic one. We want to set tonight in facts, those that we have so far. We're going to do that, as we always do, with the help of Fox's Trace Gallagher, who is with us tonight on set. Hey, Trace.
And we're going to have more of DeSantis coming up on this, but it's important to remember, Tucker, that Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has chosen to pursue a case that was investigated and rejected by two previous sets of prosecutors because, one, the case is politically explosive, as we all know, and two, it requires using largely untested legal theory. In fact, even Alvin Bragg himself initially decided against prosecuting Trump. The case, as Tucker was saying, is centered around a $130,000 payment to porn star Stormy Daniels, who claims she had an affair with Trump. The DA, Alvin Bragg, could not charge this case as a misdemeanor because the statute of limitations on a misdemeanor ran out back in 2018. And to charge it as a felony, the Manhattan DA had to perform what many call legal gymnastics and say it was a campaign finance violation going down that road. Numerous legal experts have pointed out that it would be monumentally improbable to prove that Donald Trump paid Stormy Daniels in an effort to win the White House instead of, say, an effort to save his marriage, etc. Here's law professor Jonathan Turley weighing in on the indictment just a short time ago. Watch.
The concern is that if this theory is actually the basis of the indictment, then this is a rather ignoble moment in history. Donald Trump may be the first former president to be indicted, but if this is the standard, he won't be the last.
The case would rely almost solely on the testimony of former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, who claims that Donald Trump directed him to pay Stormy Daniels the hush money on the eve of the 2016 election in exchange for keeping her quiet. But Michael Cohen is also a convicted felon who's known for stretching the truth. Cohen's former legal advisor, a man named Robert Costello, who testified before this grand jury, was on Tucker Carlson tonight back on March 20th. Watch this.
I called him up after I saw Michael Cohen on TV stating things that he said he was going to tell the grand jury and had told the grand jury that were contrary to what he told us when we first represented him in April of 2018. So I'm sitting at home watching these lies, and I said, I've got to do something about it.
Okay, so we still don't know what the actual charges are because it's unlikely they'll be unsealed until the former president legally surrenders, which likely would happen sometime next week. Donald Trump issued a statement about the indictment that reads in part, quoting here, the Democrats have lied, cheated, and stolen in their obsession with trying to get Trump. But now they've done the unthinkable, indicting a completely innocent person in an act of blatant election interference. Even Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who could run against Trump in 2024, slammed the indictment, quoting again, the weaponization of the legal system to advance a political agenda turns the rule of law on its head. It is un-American. And DeSantis makes a great point because if the charges are what we expect, then it does appear this is a political prosecution. Federal prosecutors have repeatedly turned this case down, and now you have a state prosecutor taking it on. Donald Trump's poll numbers have gone up in the past month, and this could lift those numbers even further because there will be a groundswell of emotion. For or against, it doesn't matter. That groundswell will continue to rise, Tucker.
I think that is absolutely right. I think Trump's numbers actually in the last 10 days, in one poll anyway, went from 8 up to 30 up.
Yeah.
So this, all kinds of consequences only someone can predict. Trace Gallagher, thank you, as always. So obviously this indictment is something brand new, the beginning of something, but it's also the culmination of something, the culmination of an effort to make certain that Donald Trump is never elected president again. That was the whole purpose of the January 6th committee, obviously. So far, it's not working. Trump is leading the Republican field for the nomination by a wide margin. In Georgia, a partisan grand jury whose forewoman is giving interviews to MSNBC is apparently also preparing to charge Donald Trump with the crime of doubting election results. You're not allowed to doubt election results in Georgia unless you're Stacey Abrams, in which case you get to claim to be governor when you're not. And as far as we know, the DOJ is still investigating Donald Trump on another pretextual offense, storing supposedly classified documents in his home, something that we later discovered that virtually everyone who's ever served in federal office apparently does, including Mike Pence. But take 3 steps back, pause for a minute, consider the escalation in tactics on display here. In the 2016 election, when the most powerful interests in this country decided that Donald Trump could not be president, and in fact, for the most part, assumed he would never be. It was just too ridiculous to be real. But just to make certain that he never was, the FBI worked with the Clinton campaign to spread false allegations that the president had been colluding with the government of Russia. But the FBI was never defunded and shut down, as it would have been in a functioning country. It continued to interfere in elections and does so to this day. That, of course, didn't work, and Trump took office anyway. So federal agencies did everything they could to make certain that Trump would be an ineffective and one-term president. Within days, they arrested Trump's national security advisor. Why did they do that? Because he had run an intel agency, and he knew exactly how the system works. They took him out first. Then they had a CIA operative in the White House file a fake whistleblower complaint about Ukraine, and that got Trump impeached. And then they impeached Trump again for holding a constitutionally protected rally to call on his supporters to peacefully protest what had happened to him, as you would in a democracy. So this effort today is one in a long line of unprecedented steps that permanent Washington has taken to stop Donald Trump from holding office in a democracy. Whether you like Trump or not, that is true. But none of that has stopped Republican primary voters from telling pollsters that far and away Donald Trump is their first choice for president in 2024. In fact, it may have changed their minds and made them support Trump again. Maybe not because they love Trump, but because they hate to see their beloved system destroyed, subverted and destroyed for political reasons. So the rule of law appears to be suspended tonight, not just for Trump, but for anyone who would consider voting for him. Democrats can attack police officers and seize control of the Tennessee State House. They did that today, and no one's going to go to jail. Trans Biden voters can execute Christian children, and the Biden White House will explain that actually the trans community, the transgenderists, are the real victim. This is what it seems to be. It's a political purge. And confronted with it, the real Quislings here, who are the Republican leaders in Washington, are naturally calling for a surrender. Asa Hutchinson is saying that Donald Trump needs to withdraw now because Alvin Bragg doesn't like him. So one of the reasons that Trump won in the first place in 2016 is because people like Asa Hutchinson, people who have no interest in winning or governing, and least of all in representing their actual voters or their interests, people like that have been in charge of the Republican Party for generations now, and its voters are sick of it. And if those people continue to run the Republican Party much longer, that party will no longer exist within a few years. There'll be no reason to have it. What you're seeing now is lawlessness, and the question is who can stop it. Alina Habba is Donald Trump's attorney. Alina joins us tonight. Alina, thank you so much for coming on. I guess the key question here, there's so much to sort out, but what do you believe the former president will be charged with?
Well, he'll be charged with something he didn't do. We know that for a fact from Michael Cohen himself and his lawyers. But I think it's going to be a books and records kind of charge. And knowing Alvin Bragg, the Soros-backed DA, I assume that he's going to try and stack several of these misdemeanors that a normal person would never be indicted for, let alone charged with, and try and make a felony of something that the FEC, basically the FEC has already turned down and the federal prosecutors. But that's what happens when he's leading in the polls.
I mean, you want a DA who's decriminalized violent crime effectively, and he has, that's not an overstatement, could decide that a bookkeeping error is a felony.
That's right. That's right. And you know what else, Tucker? We've seen this DA in particular. Let's just take Alvin Bragg. Let's take out all the political stuff that everybody's already spoken about ad nauseum. This DA in particular is the king of woke, right? He is Mr. I don't believe in putting people in jail, and I don't believe in felonies, and I turn felonies into misdemeanors. I think he went from 50-something percent to 28%. But when it's Donald Trump, he's trying to do the reverse. He's trying to create a situation where you take a misdemeanor that he didn't even do. His attorney settled an issue that was made up. We have Stormy that's admitted that, right? And then create something out of nothing. It's a really sad day in our country, Tucker. I mean, no matter what your politics are, it's a sad day in our country.
And no matter what your politics, that's exactly right. If you believe in our system and you want it to continue, you have to raise your hand and say stop, because this is too great an assault on our system, much greater than anything we saw on January 6th, that's for certain. So that raises the question that I'll pose to you about your client is, how is he going to respond to this? This is transparently political. It's an effort to take him out of the presidential race. That's not allowed. Will he participate in the process? Is he going to go to New York and be treated like a criminal?
You know, I'm not the criminal attorneys handling this, obviously. I know my client well, though, and I know you know him. He's not one to cower. As he said in his statement, this is proof that we need to change this country immediately. I don't see him hiding from anything. I would be shocked if that would be the consequence or the result of this. I think he would deal with it head on. I would hope so. And that's for his legal team to deal with that's handling this criminal issue. But it's just a sad thing for me. You know, they want this picture so badly that we have these DAs in Georgia. We have corrupt AGs in New York. We have corrupt DAs all over the country. And they're just trying to be the first one to get this for political purposes. But I think, Tucker, frankly, I think it's going to backfire. And I think we've seen that in the past couple of weeks.
But you could kind of see, and clearly you would counsel him if he asked you to participate in this, but you could see us approaching a kind of postmodern moment where the system becomes so politicized and illegitimate and ridiculous that some people decide, I'm not playing along with this. Why would I participate in my own illegitimate humiliation? Can you sort of see that impulse?
I don't think so. I think he should deal with it. My advice to him would be go in, face them, and make them look you in the eye, and make them look the American people in the eye. And you know what? You wanted drama. That's what you're going to get, because they're going to win. There is no crime here, and they're going to win. And DA Alvin Bragg will go down as the worst DA in history, and he's going to get his place in American history, and it's not going to be a good one. I think, you know, my advice to him, Tucker, would be to go in, face them however which way they want. If they want a production, that's on them. I think they've already done that, frankly. And you know how it goes. We'll hear leaks, just like we did with that Georgia 4 woman that came out and wanted her moment on MSNBC. We'll see what happens.
Does this moment feel dangerous to you?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Does this moment feel dangerous to you for the country?
Oh, terrible. Terrible. I'm petrified for this country. I'm a lawyer, and I believe in the bedrock of this country. I believe in the Constitution. I believe that when I took my oath of office, I was supposed to take the laws of this country and abide by them no matter what my personal beliefs and politics are. And this is the most extreme, scariest moment from somebody within my profession. And I'm embarrassed, frankly, for my profession at this moment. And I'm scared for our country. There's no better way to say it, Tucker. I'm petrified for our country right now. This is third world stuff. We don't put politics ahead of the law. You know, we have a democracy. We have the right to vote. We have the right to have a fair and impartial jury. And evidently, if you're a Republican, Donald Trump, or you just don't agree with somebody, you don't get that. And it's not okay.
So last question, and I'll say I'm at a disadvantage because this just happened and we're all trying to figure out exactly what's going on. But don't you think it would be really helpful for the preservation of our core systems for a prominent Democrat who dislikes Donald Trump personally and didn't vote for him to stand up and defend the principle of equality under the law for the sake of America? Wouldn't that be reassuring for everybody right about now?
Yeah. Yes. And I think that person, frankly, Tucker, should be the president of this country. I think that the president has an obligation to be that person. And I want to see what Karine Jean-Pierre says. I really hope for our country's sake, and I'm Donald Trump's attorney, but I'm an American citizen. And my parents are immigrants. And I'll tell you right now that I hope for our country's sake that the president stands up. I hope that the Congress is looking in. I know they asked DA Bragg to come in and he refused. I want this country to get on track, period. I don't care how we do it, but the president, the leader of the free world, needs to do that. And we don't have the right people in that place right now, unfortunately.
No, we don't. Lena Habba, the president's attorney, thank you very much. So as far as we know, and of course we could be wrong because we're very caught up in the story as it unfolds, but as far as we know, no prominent Democrat has stood up to defend the system against this perversion of the system. Certainly the president has not done that. But one of Donald Trump's opponents is happy to do it. He joins us now. Vivek Ramaswamy is running against Trump for the nomination. And he'd like to win, but he thinks that this is a grave threat to the country. Vivek, thank you so much for coming on tonight. How do you view this indictment?
This is a grave day in American democracy. I mean, this is a threat. This is fundamentally un-American. And Tucker, it's not even about Donald Trump. It's about every American, because if they can do it to Trump, they can do it to you. And this is something that's bigger than partisan politics. Yes, I would like to defeat Donald Trump in this primary and in the election. But I want to do it by convincing every voter to vote for me, because at the end of the day, the American people get to decide who governs this country, not a politicized prosecutor. And if you want to know how it's politicized, this was a prosecutor who's effectively fulfilling a campaign promise that he made. If it's any individual citizen and a prosecutor campaigns on indicting him or investigating him, that itself is politicized, let alone when he's the lead member of the opposition party to the ruling party that's in power. And we are not a country, Tucker. Whoever we are as a country, it's not a country that allows police power to be used by the ruling party to arrest its political opponents. Yet that's exactly what happened today. And I don't care if you're on the left or the right, turn the table, wear the shoe on the other foot. The other side would be complaining. You know what? The same principles apply in reverse as well. It's a sad day, and I'm worried for the future of the country, because I do think we're skating on thin ice right now.
And you wonder about motive. I mean, so on Monday, Christian children were killed by a trans activist, and the White House immediately defended trans activists and said they're the real victims here. Now, Thursday, you see Democrats indict the Republican frontrunner. It almost feels like they're pushing the population to react. We think they're demoralized and passive. Let's see if they really are. I mean, at what point do we conclude they're doing this in order to produce a reaction?
Well, if you're skating on thin ice, you don't take a hammer to that thin ice and crack it.
That's right.
Joe Biden actually ran on the promise of uniting this country. There's nothing more unifying he could do in his 4 years in office than to get on TV tonight and say that, you know what, Joe Biden, I want to defeat Donald Trump in this general election, but I still condemn this politicized prosecution. It's not just the fact that he's not doing it, Tucker. It's the fact that this is part of an immune system of the government, federal government, state government, our entire system, immune reaction to an outsider that actually wants to reform the system. And one way or another, by high water or not, they were going to come for him. And in the end, it's not about Trump. It's about every American who's represented by Trump in the system. That's exactly who they're coming after. And that's why I'm so keen on saying this as an opponent of Donald Trump. Those of us who have standing and credibility competing against him in this election, we have a special responsibility, Joe Biden included, to call out this politicized rules of the road. Imagine if Bush or Cheney had gone after John Kerry over some technical campaign finance violation. There's no doubt that every liberal in this country would instantly see the constitutional problem. Well, it applies in reverse as well. And they would have been right. But I think we as Republicans and as Democrats together need to put aside partisanship and call out this politicized persecution through prosecution for what it is.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. I would defend them. I defended Hillary Clinton when the FBI director tried to tank her presidential campaign with that ridiculous press conference. I despise Hillary Clinton, but I care about the system more than any individual. And clearly you do too. And I appreciate your coming on tonight. And immune system response is the perfect description of what we're watching. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Whitlock is a frequent guest on the show for a reason. He brings insight that few others have. He's host of Fearless. He joins us tonight in the wake of what seems like momentous news. Jason, what's your reaction to this?
Tucker, I hear you loud and clear. I've been watching all week. You've been doing a marvelous job. I do think all of this is tied together. I live here in Nashville, Tennessee, where we had a transgender person murder 3 young children. Today in our state capital, which is right here in Nashville, the transgender anti-gun crowd took over the House for a time. And then by the time I get home, I find out Donald Trump has been indicted. And I hear you loud and clear. They are agitating for unrest. That's the only way to interpret this. They are agitating for unrest, and there is a godless element in this country that doesn't care about fairness. They don't care about the will of the people. They care about power and control. As you have spelled out this week, they think they're God. And they don't think they can make up the rules. They can decide what fairness is. They don't have a biblical worldview, and it's sickening for me. I'm upset. I'm emotional. I'm ready for whatever's next. And I hope every other man out there watching this show, I hope you're ready for whatever's next. If that's what they want, let's get to it.
It feels like this is not the behavior of people who want the current system to continue. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, they don't like our Judeo-Christian founding. That's why they don't like the founding fathers. That's why they want to overthrow the Constitution that is laced with biblical values and biblical principles. They want a Marxist, godless, communist country. Plain and simple, clear as day, with the alphabet mafia, this LGBTQ alphabet mafia in control. the godless people that you're talking about that are totally antithetical to Christianity and biblical values wants control and is seizing control, and they feel like taking down Donald Trump and beating everyone else into submission and just making them give up. Let's just give up on Donald Trump, give up on... Tucker, I don't say this with pride. I really don't. I'm just being factual. I've never voted. And so I'm not saying that with pride. I'm hardcore MAGA tonight. I will be voting. I am hardcore MAGA. I've never voted. I did. I observed Trump. I'm somewhat supportive of Trump, but they have made me MAGA. And they have made me ready for whatever is next, because what they are building for young people, I can't sit by and just let it happen without raising my voice and without being willing to sacrifice whatever so that kids don't live in a communist Marxist society. These people that think the government is going to take care of them don't understand history, that they've never studied history. They don't understand how tyrannical a government is. If they have their way, if they have their way, we're all catching hell except for the elites. And yes, I have a very good bank account, and perhaps I'm an elite, but my heart is working class. My parents were factory workers. I came from nothing in this country. I'm black. They're telling everybody, black kid, oh, you can't come from nothing and make it in this country. That's bullshit. This country is the greatest country in the history of the planet. It's the safest, most prosperous place for black people and all people. That's why people are beating down the doors to get here. And they've demonized the whole thing, and they've turned Trump into this devilish Luciferian character when they are the devils. They're the ones that don't believe in God.
Jason Whitlock. I agree. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yep.
A Fox News alert for you. Reports indicate that Donald Trump will be fingerprinted, handcuffed. He has been told to surrender early next week in New York City. Obviously, this is a humiliation ritual. The question is, how do we respond as Americans who are trying to be decent and measured and keeping, as always, the interests of our children and our grandchildren in mind, in the hope of continuing what we have, which is great. Harris Faulkner thinks that way. She is the host of Faulkner Focus, the co-host of Outnumbered, our friend. She joins us tonight. Harris, thanks so much for coming on. Give us your thoughts about where we are and how we should respond.
Well, first of all, just on the heels of what Jason Whitlock said, and I think we worked in Kansas City at the same time, if I'm remembering correctly. He was in sports, very talented guy. America right now is just watching a moment we've never seen before. There were two former vice presidents who were indicted. One back in 1832, and then, of course, Spiro Agnew under Nixon. And so we have seen that happen before, but a sitting president was impeached more than once and then became an ex-president, and they're still going after him. And I have to tell you, sitting on the board earlier today, his former press secretary, of course, is my co-host, one of them, I said to Kayleigh McEnany, there's no way they indict former President Trump because this case is so weak. I've had expert after expert on my show, Tucker, and I watch your show, and they're all saying if the federal government didn't want to run this case, if the former DA of Manhattan, Cy Vance, didn't run this case, if there were employees that were quitting when Alvin Bragg came on in 2022 and he said, I'm not going to do criminal charges against Trump, and they said, oh, how can you not do that? We quit if you're not going to go after him. And then Bragg says, well, I just want to make sure the case is strong enough to win. I think it's more about dates on the calendar. Where are we now? We're getting closer to a time that Joe Biden might want to announce. He's out on that 20-day, trip trying to convince people that inflation isn't high and that the prices that they're seeing for the cost of everything, including everything they put in their mouths, is actually an illusion. So while he's out there doing that, this is going on. I don't believe in coincidences, but let me just do a little housekeeping because you brought up some important points. Are we going to see this president in handcuffs? Let me tell you who's in charge. It's the Secret Service. They will take the lead of all of the police forces. The NYPD can, as I understand it, take care of security out on the street. And New York State court officers will take care of security inside the courthouse. But the former president of the United States will be protected, as always, by Secret Service. They will, quote unquote, set the tone. This is according to sources close to Fox News. They will mention the instance or the decision of a handcuff or not to handcuff the president, they will make those types of determinations. So that's what America may see. They may see a Secret Service that decides we don't need to see him in handcuffs. And we may even see a situation where this case falls apart. And then you have Democrats who've been kind of, more than leaning to the notion that maybe we don't wave any flags yet. Like Senator Manchin of West Virginia, who said just recently, I think that there are many reasons why Donald Trump should not be the next president again, but you should not allow the court system to be perceived as basically a political pawn. Senator Tina Smith, Democrat from Minnesota, says there's no need to wave any flags here. Being indicted is a terrible thing if that happens. So this was a couple of days ago. Chairman of House Judiciary, Jim Jordan, told me, Harris, on your show, let's reveal to the public now the letter that we're sending from several House committees. Republicans are Oversight, Administration, Judiciary, calling Alvin Bragg to the Hill so they can talk to him. They want to see all the communications, Tucker, between the DA's office here in Manhattan and the federal government. And was there any sort of, now they didn't use this word, but you and I can use it because we know the meaning of collusion. Did they work together on the timing of this? Are there any communications to show that? That's what Chairman Jim Jordan is going after. There are a lot of things that are going to be at play. So before we, America gets ready to prep itself for what it might see, we don't know yet. A lot can happen. By the way, they're taking some time off in this case because they have to do other things. We don't know what those other things are. And this indictment was filed under seal. Maybe an announcement of exactly what will come in it will happen within days because he's likely to be arraigned, according to Fox sources, by next Wednesday. We're watching all of it. Now the positive. We live in the best country on the planet. And I love just then, and I didn't get to hear all of what Jason said, Jason Whitlock, but I heard the part about faith. We know who we are. We're strong. We're patriotic. We know the difference between right and wrong. Let's be patient and let this play out.
Harris Faulkner for us tonight. Thank you for all of that. It was great to see you.
God bless you.
God bless. So when the history of cable news is written, assuming anyone bothers to write it, but if it ever is written, Glenn Beck will have his own chapter as possibly the greatest synthesizer of big ideas ever to appear on camera. And a lot of people made fun of Glenn Beck over the years for that, but if you go back and watch the tape, you will find out that maybe more than any other person on television, Glenn Beck got it right. Again and again and again. So we thought tonight is the perfect opportunity to hear from him. He's the co-founder of Blaze Media. He's just written a book called The Great Reset, and he joins us now for an overview of what we're watching. Glenn Beck, thank you so much for coming on tonight. How
thank you. It's
would you
very
interpret
kind of you
this?
to say.
Well, it's true.
So let me, I've got a couple of things here for you. Let me just go through. I'm going to bring I think, a different perspective to this. We have the banking crisis. They say it's fine. It's just beginning. Yesterday, we had the Saudis and Brazil and China enter a deal to where the petrodollar is over. Brazil and China are going to trade in their own currency. That's the beginning of the end of our currency. That means a dollar collapse. That means we become Venezuela. We will have war with China. We will have war with Russia and Iran. We have the Restrict Bill. We have social media and our NSA and everybody else in bed with each other, silencing people. We, of course, have the raccoon dogs, which we all know is bullcrap. And now this week, we have a new gun grab that they're trying to do. Biden and his family taking money from the Chinese. What do you think this Donald Trump thing is really all about? The America that we knew, the fundamental transformation that started in 2008, is finished. We are no longer viewed as a superpower. We are now an elderly, we're Joe Biden just walking into the twilight. What this is all about, I believe, is trying to inflame this country. They've wanted violence from the right from the beginning. They can't wait it. They need it. Because if we strike out, look at January 6th, the day they're letting the shaman out of prison because it was all trumped up. Thank you, Tucker Carlson, for revealing this. The day they're letting him out, They do this to Donald Trump. They want you to strike out. Why? Because then they can close the cage. I'm going to make another prediction for you, Tucker. You said I got it right. Well, everything I've been talking about since 2008, this is the time. I'm going to make a prediction. By 2025, we are going to be at war. We are going to have a new dollar, a currency that probably is coming from the central bank. We'll have a currency collapse, and we will live in a virtual police state. I know that might sound crazy to a lot of people. It's not far off. The Bill of Rights is gone. Nobody is paying attention. Where are the Republicans? Where are the decent Democrats that can see this is insanity? Donald Trump, the reason why this is going to help Donald Trump, and that's why I don't think they're doing it so he can't run. They're doing it because they want people to strike out. Please turn to God, repent, pray for our country, pray for peace. Put on the full armor of God. But here's what they miss. Donald Trump is not even a person anymore. He is a symbol. He is a symbol of the average, everyday guy that keeps screwed every single time. Watches other people screw up big banks, screw up their companies, and get away with it. They see people all the time doing stuff that they know if they did, they'd be in prison for 20 years. But because they're not part of the elite, they get away with it. Donald Trump has taken arrow after arrow, and that's why this is the way the average American feels tonight.
Yeah.
I hope that there's a few Democrats out there, but this guy has been taking the bullets for the average person now for years. And people on the right feel like he's the only guy that really gets what the people are feeling, and it's not gonna end well for the Democrats in the next election. It's just not. I don't know if Donald Trump is the winner or not, but I will tell you this. You're not going to stop 100 million people. This country is in shambles. And there's going to be 100 million people that will walk on broken glass and through fire to vote for someone other than this corrupt banana republic administration.
That's, I think, exactly right. Glenn Beck, wow. I'm going to be processing that for a couple days. I really appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. Thank you.
So I think it's become pretty obvious to anyone who's paying close attention and being honest with himself that what you're seeing is not really a contest between Republicans and Democrats, the left and right. It's a contest between the people in charge and everybody else. It's not actually partisan in a traditional sense. There's really one party on the big issues being economics and foreign policy. There's total agreement in Washington.